Yeah, so credit cards, like they can be a dangerous debt, because it's again you're spending money that you don't actually have, similar to the afterpay. And so if you do have a credit card, you need to be really mindful about how you're using it and that you're paying it off on time and that you're not using it like free money, like extra money. You're using it maybe as a way to get points or some other way, but you're still paying it off. Welcome to Checks and Balances. This is Jess and Michaela back with another fantastic episode of The Takeover, sponsored by Partners Life. And today we are talking about good debts and bad debts and maybe some neutral debts.
Necessary neutral debts.
Necessary neutral. Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a different format today because we are going to run through a list of different debts and we're going to take our vote on what we think is good, bad, and neutral. And of course, we're going to talk about each debt, what they do for you, how to get out of them, how to pay them down, how you can avoid taking out these kinds of debts. And yeah, we know like people have debt. It's very hard to avoid
necessary fact
debt
of life, really,
at the
isn't
moment,
it?
I'd say, especially with cost of living. Like people are using their credit cards, people are taking out loans for things, and it's really hard to avoid. And we get that, and we just want to make sure that people have a way out and they're not perpetually getting into debt and they can find other solutions that are not taking out loans. So just to start, these are some stats and you're probably going to say this is extremely obvious, like we all know this, but still kind of interesting. The FSC put out a financial resilience report recently that said 70% of Kiwis worry about money daily, weekly, or monthly. Obviously, we're all worrying about money right now.
I feel like it would be more than that.
Probably.
Once a month?
I think about money every day.
I think I do.
In
Yeah,
some
I'm pretty
capacity.
sure. I think, especially since getting a mortgage, I think I check my
Yes.
banking app every day.
Yes.
Like, what's in there? It's like, when you go to check the fridge for a snack.
Yeah. Has anything
Has
changed?
anything appeared in there? No. Okay, close the door. And then you go back 5 minutes later, look again. That's
Yeah.
what I'm like with my banking
I don't
app.
know what it is. Like I open my banking app anytime I go to make a purchase. I know there's money in there, but I think it's just a habit from when I was in uni and I had like 5 cents most of the time. It's like I always I just have to check. Because did something change? I don't know. Like did someone just suddenly take all my money out of my account? I don't know.
Yeah,
I have
we're
to do
definitely
it.
part of the 70%
Yeah.
then.
And the study also found that 89% of New Zealanders are concerned about inflation and 75% are concerned about interest rates.
Right.
Which I definitely think is higher because interest rates are on everybody's mind.
Well, it's also all over the news. I feel like it's quite hard for us to tell what general people are hearing because obviously we're in here, so this is all we talk about. I actually suggested to James yesterday that we have an OCR cut party. What are your thoughts?
What, like to predict it? And
like the day that the OCR
when they finally cut it.
Yeah, we should have a party.
I agree with that.
He said Michaela should organize it. And
okay, I'm not organizing any more parties.
But anyway, I feel like
that's a different story.
Yeah, we're surrounded by these things all the time, so we hear about them. But I think in the media, probably it's more prevalent at the moment because they obviously love pushing stories that are a bit negative,
a little bit of
and
fear mongering, just a tiny bit. So just a sprinkling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's probably up compared to normal, isn't it?
Yeah. And obviously, when we say interest rates, it's generally in regards to mortgages, but rates for all different types of loans, go up, car loans, things like that. Okay. So let's get into it. The list of debts. So get your voting hands ready.
Cool. It's like a would you rather.
It is, kind of. Okay, so the first one on the list is personal loans, which sounds very generic, but I would say a personal loan is anything you're taking out that's usually not secured to an asset. So maybe it's a loan you've taken out to fund a wedding, maybe a trip, small renovations around your home that aren't tied to your mortgage, or big ticket items like TVs or computer setups, things like that.
Okay, yeah. I've got my vote ready. Do we vote now?
So sure, we can vote now. Personal loans, what do you think? Good, bad, or neutral?
I think bad.
Why do you think bad?
I think bad because I feel like these debts are things that are not essential. They're also things I feel like when we talk about delayed gratification, for instance, a trip, like I'm just thinking travel, standing out
Hmm.
as that, um, you should save for that. You shouldn't be going in debt to go on a trip because a trip is not like your groceries. It's like
I
that's a
agree.
luxury item
I
effectively.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think a personal loan is generally a bad debt. And I think a personal loan is an easy trap to fall into. And the best way to avoid needing to take out this type of loan is, like you said, is saving.
Yeah.
If you know you want to go on a trip next year, just start saving now. Like even $20 a week, it can make a big difference. And like you said, taking out a loan for something that's not necessary to your life immediately.
Yeah.
It's just like do your best to avoid it.
And if you can't, like, if you think about it in a very simple way, like, if you can't afford to save for it, let's say the trip, if we
Yeah,
can't afford to save for the trip, you're not going to be able to afford the debt that you're repaying for the trip. That's
exactly.
going to
Yeah.
be worse
No,
than just
nothing is
saving.
changing.
Yeah.
And I think if we think about it around travel, it's like you could take out a loan and pay for the flights and the accommodation, but what about when you get there? Now you've got to pay
Yeah.
for food and outings and all that. So
Yeah.
you're gonna end up even more in the hole when you come back, most likely. And I'd say that's similar with weddings. Like if you're taking out a massive loan so you can have this like
Instagram worthy.
Instagram worthy wedding. I don't know if you are on TikTok much, but there's this wedding at the minute in India for the
Oh,
family
I've
called the
seen this.
Ambanis.
The Kardashians went there, right?
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
like the most insane luxurious wedding
Mental.
of all time, but they probably didn't have to take out a loan for that.
Aren't they like Asia's richest
I
people,
think
eh? I
so,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. So this one, just saving. That's how
Yeah.
you can avoid getting into this type of
And if you
debt.
can't afford the saving, you're not going to be able to afford the debt.
Exactly. And just some examples of personal loans that people fall into. I would say companies like Harmony, and this isn't to shade any of these companies. They all have a purpose, but just some examples. Harmony, Q Card, Gem Visa, those ones where you can get those larger amounts of money for a shorter term,
Hmm.
and it's not secured to anything. Flight Center cards are
Do
also one.
they? Oh, they're obviously targeting people to go on trips.
Yeah,
Do these types of things tend to have higher interest rates as well,
higher interest
but not
rates.
as high as
Yeah.
credit cards? Is that right?
Not as high as credit cards. You'd probably be looking in the like 10 to 15%
Okay.
range.
Right.
Obviously each company is different, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say mid-range interest
Okay.
rates. The next one is vehicle loans,
Mm-hmm.
car loans. I feel like this is a touchy subject because the people out there that just love nice cars and think like I need that car,
Yeah.
they might have a differing opinion, but I think bad debt.
Do you? I think I'm neutral necessary on this one, but with a massive caveat. Like, we moved back from London early last year, and moving home was really expensive, and we didn't have cars in the UK, so we didn't have cars to sell to buy new cars over here. Um, and very luckily my dad had a couple spare lying around, and he doesn't have like flashy cars. We never have, to be honest, as a family. Like, he's always had very practical. He's now got himself a nicer car, but growing up we've always just had what we needed,
Mm-hmm.
and we managed to borrow that off him for a good year.
This is the blue egg,
This
isn't
is the
it?
blue egg.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the
Jess
infamous
drives
blue
the
egg.
best car ever.
Oh, it's so
No,
embarrassing.
I
I
won't
can't believe we're putting this on the
talk about your
podcast.
car.
Sorry, Dad. It's a baby blue Toyota Estima hybrid. So I've since bought
Peak performance.
Michaela's ridden. It's a comfortable ride.
It is a comfortable
Yeah,
ride.
yeah. Boy. So we were lucky enough to borrow that, but if we didn't have that, it is impossible to live here without a car.
That
And
is
we would have
true.
had to borrow money, probably, maybe at least borrow a little bit of money to buy a car. And saying that, we wouldn't have bought a brand new car or anything like that. We probably would have spent 5 or 10 grand
Yeah,
max, just like something to get around. Because without that, I would be spending like an hour and a half getting to work every day.
fair enough. I think I'm jaded when it comes to vehicle loans because in my early 20s, I fell into the new vehicle trap more than once. And when I found out I was moving to New Zealand, I think I moved here in 2020, and I had a 2020 Mini Cooper Countryman that had a big old fat loan on it. And well, one thing I will say is that back home, car loans seem a lot more common than they are
Yep.
here, which is, I'll talk about that at another point. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I had a massive car loan and I found out, oh, you're moving overseas. Well, what am I going to do with the car and the loan? First of
Yeah.
all, I had like 3 months to even try and sell the car and get rid of it. And it's so hard to sell a brand new car and like recoup those costs.
Of course, or they're
Yeah.
depreciating.
So I got very lucky because my local Mini Cooper dealership, they had a need for my specific make and model and year of car. So they actually really wanted to buy it back off of me as a pre-owned vehicle. So I got very, very lucky. They gave me a really good price for it, but I still had to pay $5,000 back to them to cover the loan amount.
I
So
feel like that could have been way worse.
it could have been so much worse, and I was sweating bullets the whole time. And after that, I vowed to myself that I will never take out a vehicle loan again unless I can put down like a 50% cash deposit, or if I can lean it against my house, because that's something you can do.
Okay. I think I actually did speak to Laura about this because we only really want to buy hybrids. And some banks are doing like green loans. So they've
Yeah.
got much lower, like a 1% interest rate
Yep.
for a period of time if it's a hybrid car.
Mm-hmm.
So there are those.
Yeah, there's other options like EV loans or just green home loans are
Yeah.
something that you can secure against your property, and they have a much lower interest rate, and you can use it to buy a hybrid vehicle or fully electric vehicle.
Mhm.
And then once you come off that 1% interest rate, it just goes to mortgage rates, and mortgage rates are going to be a lot nicer than
In a
your
car loan.
standard car loan rates.
Okay, so I think we're deciding it's a bad debt if you're buying a brand new car that's a depreciating asset on a car loan.
Yeah. Don't take out a
Don't
$50,000
that,
car loan.
please. But there are some times where it's necessary, especially in places like New Zealand.
Yeah. And for this one, it's again, if it's not an emergency and you're just thinking you want a new car,
Yeah.
do that savings.
Yeah, exactly.
If it is an emergency, try and, not take out a ridiculously high loan. Think about what you can actually service. A lot of these, when you check servicing, it might look good on paper, but think about what you can actually afford in monthly repayments and think about how that's going to impact you in the long term with the rest of your goals and outgoings, things like that.
Nice.
Okay, next one, payday loans. Have you ever heard of a payday loan? I
actually have not heard of this.
Okay,
so
a payday loan is probably the most predatory type of loan you can come across.
Yeah.
These are the types of loans that you will see. Maybe you'll be walking down the street and you'll see a little shop front and it says, get cash now, or get your paycheck today, or things like that.
I have seen those.
Maybe TV ads. And essentially, it's unsecured lending. They'll give it to you immediately, and it is for people that are in situations where they cannot cover their expenses until their next payday, which is obviously not a great situation to be in.
No. Is the interest really high on those?
The interest will be very high, and generally you're obligated to repay that one by your next paycheck.
Wow, okay.
And the problem with this is that you can end up in an endless loop of just taking out, payday loans, because if you're in the situation, unless something has really happened that in that specific pay period where you can't afford your outgoings, it may be that your income is just not covering your expenses at the minute. And then that's how you end up in that endless loop. And if that's the case, then you need to sit down and look at your budget, potentially what type of work you're doing. Can you improve your income? And I do want to preface this by saying, like, if you're in this position, it might feel a bit embarrassing that you are having to take out this kind of loan, but seek help from your community and your family and friends, and sit down and look at your outgoings and see what you can fix so that you're not going to continue to be in this situation.
For sure. There's also, I know Pete in our team does volunteering on the weekends at free budgeting services. So there are free.
Oh, that's so cool. Go, Pete.
I know. Yeah, there are free services out there if you're struggling with your budget and you're finding it difficult, and you feel like you're always going backwards. There are free services out there for you to go through an expert with your budget. So definitely try that. There are also places like Debt Fix is one that I've heard of that they do some coaching on how to get out of debt and stay out of debt, they try and find better solutions than what you're using. So that could be another option to look into.
And also, if it's a one-off thing, like you've had a real unexpected expense and now you can't make rent on time or something like that, try and work it out with maybe your landlord or a family member or something, so that you can avoid going down the payday loan path and you can find another resource to help you meet that mark so that you don't end up in that loop. So I feel like we can both confidently say bad debt.
Bad debt.
Bad debt.
Not fans. Yep.
Next one is Afterpay and lay-by facilities.
How do you feel about these?
Okay, well, it's definitely a bad debt, I'm going to say, but I have used Afterpay in the past. We've talked about my shopping. However, I've canceled my Afterpay account a few months ago. But yeah, I do think it's a bad debt, and I think it's a completely avoidable debt, because most of the time the people that are using Afterpay are using it for the instant gratification, not the delayed gratification, as you said earlier, which would be saving up for the item that you want and then purchasing it. You now have the ability to just purchase it now and then pay it off backwards.
These types of things don't charge interest, right?
So they don't charge interest, but if you miss payments, then you get charging fees.
Do they make it so that you have to manually make the payment as opposed to the payments being automatic?
They're automatic, but you can make payments ahead of time. So it's on an automatic schedule, and it will take it from your bank account, but you can just go in and pay it.
I can see how
manually.
people would fall into this, because this feels like an almost too good to be true. Like, I don't have to pay it now. Exactly. I don't pay interest.
Yeah.
But then I guess the danger is that, I can't say I've used these myself, but I guess the danger is that you start to lack clarity of what you can actually afford, because your Afterpay payments are building up.
Definitely. I think that's what had happened to me is, and the reason I started using it is because like with our budget, we have our allocated like fund money each week.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can stretch my fund money much further by just buying this thing on Afterpay and then using my fund money to make the Afterpay payment each week.
Yeah.
Which was fine. Like it's not like I ever missed payments or ended up in a bad situation. But like you said, that mentality of not knowing what I could actually afford was like, that was the hole that I fell into, because now that I'm not using it, it's like, okay, well, if you want that thing that costs $400, that's 4 weeks of fun money you got to save up, versus just buying it.
It's the clarity of being able to look at your account and be like, I can spend this much money on fun stuff.
Yeah.
And not have to think 4 weeks ahead or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing with Afterpay is, so there's new regulations that just came out, and Afterpay just announced a couple days ago that as of July 23rd, which I think will be the day after this episode comes out, they have to comply with new regulations, meaning they now have to report to a customer's credit score. So historically, Afterpay did not report to your credit score.
What does that mean?
Well, that basically means if you missed a payment on Afterpay, that wasn't affecting anything on your credit report.
Surprising.
So it is surprising, but that was what attracted a lot of people to it, because it was like almost having a credit card without the implications of having a credit card.
See that.
And the other thing with Afterpay is like they will just constantly increase your limit as long as you make payments on time. So people are getting access to quite large amounts of credit without it acting like a true credit facility.
Right.
So as of July 23rd, it will now have to operate like a true credit facility, which means if you're missing payments or if you're making on-time payments, that's being reported to your credit report, and it's going to be logged the same as like a credit card would be. And the other difference is they will have to start doing hard credit checks when you sign up. So when you sign up for Afterpay, now they will be checking your credit score and your credit report and only approving you if you have a good credit history.
It seems strange that they weren't doing that before.
Well, I know.
It should have been.
And because it's quite, like, this type of lay-by facilities are quite new, I think, in the last, I could be wrong, but I think 5 years.
Yeah,
kind of
it feels like that.
And they've just gotten increasingly
Rampant.
popular.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think this will probably help keep their customer base in, like they're not putting people into hardship situations because they've overspent and there seems like there's no
Oh, so they're calling
repercussions.
this their check in the box. Like, we've done our checks on this person.
Yeah,
Is it?
basically.
Oh,
Yeah.
far out.
So I don't know. I'm sure it will be a good thing. It will be a good thing because it will stop people from, they'll be more mindful about what they're spending.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're saying Afterpay bad.
I'm saying bad debt. I
Yeah,
love you,
I agree.
Afterpay, but bad debt. Next on the list is mortgages, my bread and butter, my favorite. And I'm going to say good debt.
Good debt. I'm going to say, yeah, I mean, it's good / necessary. Obviously, I would
Yeah.
prefer not to have a mortgage.
This is true.
Because, yeah, but I have to. Like, if I want to own a house, not many people can buy a house cash.
Yes,
outright.
exactly. Unless you're a very, very lucky person, most Kiwis are going to have a mortgage if they own a property.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I say good debt is because this is probably one of the very few debts that will sort of, I don't want to say get you ahead, but it allows you to hold an asset that traditionally we say that property values will double every 10 years. And so I know you guys say on the wealth team that your owner occupied property isn't necessarily like a
Yeah, you're right.
wealth
We're doing
creating
financial
asset,
plans.
but
I mean, you have to live somewhere, right? So, yes, it's part of your net worth, the value of your house. But when you're thinking about investments that you can use for retirement, like you can't. I mean, there are those things that you can do now. What are they called? Reverse mortgages, maybe?
that's a whole other
Something.
episode
We
in
need Mike and
itself.
James for that. There's a thing where people can start to mortgage the house that they're living in to fund their retirement. So
Yeah.
those things are out there. But typically, let's say if you keep it simple, you need a box to live in. And so we don't think of that as an investment asset necessarily. And if you sold that box that you want to live in, you have to buy another box to live in. So
And you need another mortgage.
yeah, so we don't typically think of it that way. But in saying that, people do also use equity in their homes to buy investment property. And
Yes.
so that's where it sort of leads to, right?
Yeah. And so it's a starting point. Having that mortgage gets you on the property ladder. You might be getting out more mortgages later, but that's how you build a property portfolio. Unless I said, like, you're really rich and you could just buy 10
Like, buy
houses with cash.
Yeah.
And
be nice.
Mortgages tend to be on low interest rates. I know we don't think they're low right now, but compared to a personal loan or a credit card, those are pretty reasonable interest rates.
And that's because they're secured against the house itself.
Exactly. Yeah. So generally with debts, secured debts are going to have lower interest rates than unsecured debts. So secured debt is anything that is lent against an asset. So it could be a car, it could be most commonly your house. There is specialist types of lending that can be lent against other things like stock portfolios, but we're not going to talk about that because it's too complicated.
But like that, so that's why the interest rates can be lower, right? Because the person who's lending the money is going, this risk is lower because you have a physical asset that I know I can take that
and I can sell it and I can recoup the money that I've lent that person.
So I don't need to charge you as much interest because the risk is lower.
Exactly. But if I take out a personal loan that's unsecured so that I can go to Bali for 3 months,
who's to say you're going to come
there's
back?
Nothing, exactly. I could just disappear into the ether. Who knows?
So, James, before we continue, I have got a special announcement.
Have you started sticking to your budget?
Absolutely not.
You finally made it as an after-hours DJ.
I wish. Mate, the thing is, we have got a brand new podcast partner, Partners Life.
You mean the award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured?
Yep, they're also a New Zealand operated company and they are passionate about increasing financial literacy amongst Kiwis.
Sounds like a great match. Where can I learn more about them?
Check out their website in our show notes below.
Really thought DJ Magic Mike was going to be a global sensation for a second.
Okay, so I'm saying good debt and you're saying neutral debt?
I think it's good / neutral. I think I'm just sad because I'm new to the mortgage game in the last few months and it's sad watching the money come out. But
yeah, it is kind of depressing. I'm not gonna lie. The next one on the list is credit cards. So I feel like most people have a credit card. Well, I think
we don't.
Do you not?
Nah.
Oh, interesting.
You're surprised?
Well,
How
I feel
could I
like I
work for
shouldn't.
James
I
and have a
feel like
credit
I
card?
shouldn't be surprised because it's you, and yes, because you work for the wealth team.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, we only have one credit card, and it has a very, very, very small limit.
Mm.
So it doesn't. It mostly only gets used like if you have to put one down for a hotel or something.
Actually, to be fair, in the UK, we did have an Amex, and it was the only credit card. It's some weird thing, but I think because we were on visas for a period of time, we were citizens eventually. I'm sure we could have tried again, but we actually could not get a credit card. And we wanted a credit card because we were getting rental cars when we'd go to Europe
Yes.
or like want to do a road trip around the UK. We'd need a rental car. You'd need a credit card to put down. Amex was the only one we could get, and even then, a lot of places didn't accept the Amex as the credit card.
I've had an Amex before as well, and I actually I signed up for it because they had a massive points welcome offer, which can also be a trap. But and I used those points to pay for part of my trip back home to Canada. And then while I was over there, I used that card because like I don't know, just one place to keep my expenses. And then I made a whole bunch of extra points, and then I came back and I paid off the card and closed it.
Nice.
But then I still got to use those points towards other travel.
Well,
However, points are not a good reason to get a credit card.
No, one of the few.
Yeah, so credit cards, like they can be a dangerous debt because it's again you're spending money that you don't actually have, similar to the afterpay. And so if you do have a credit card, you need to be really mindful about how you're using it and that you're paying it off on time and that you're not using it like free money, like extra money. You're using it maybe as a way to get points or some other way, but you're still paying it off.
Yeah, I feel like I would prefer people just don't go there. And it's the whole thing, like we said, of clarity, like points. I know the boys have done podcasts on credit cards before, and like they said, credit card companies make so much money, and there's a reason they make so much money, right? Not everybody's paying those credit cards off on time.
Yeah.
There's obviously people falling behind on that debt. The majority of people are. So,
or you're just making the minimum payment and you're like, well, it was an on-time payment. However, you're still getting charged likely 22% interest on the balance you've left behind because you've only paid the minimum. And the bigger that balance gets, 22% is a lot, especially if you're carrying a balance in the,
yeah, I think overall steer clear, and it comes back to the clarity as well. So like we said, if you've got your fun money account, your discretionary spending account, you can see $400 in there, you can spend $400. When you've got this sort of endless limit of credit card that you can use, it's very difficult to pull apart what have I spent this week or this month on my fun stuff, what do I need to pay back. Yes, you can accumulate points, but really I think the bad outweighs the good.
Yeah, I definitely think the risk outweighs the benefit on that one. And I also think it's a common like trap people fall into, thinking they need a credit card because there's this sort of I kind of want to call it a myth, but a lot of people think that you have to take out a credit card like as soon as you turn whatever the age is you can get a credit card. I think it's 18 back home. I don't know what it is here. That you have to take out a credit card because you have to start building your credit.
That's right.
And that is not necessarily true. And that's a very American way of thinking of things.
Okay.
In New Zealand, we do have credit reports and we do have credit scores, but it's not necessarily viewed the same way it is in North America. It's basically like you either have really bad credit or we just don't care and you've just got good credit. I don't know. Like the number is not as heavily scrutinized as it is overseas. So if you've got a credit score of 700, if you've got a credit score of 800, it's all the same. You've got a good credit score.
Okay.
So don't feel like you have to start opening debt facilities to somehow improve yourself. It's not going to get you ahead. If anything, you're opening yourself up to risk and of falling behind.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So credit cards, no good.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a bad.
Cool.
For some reason, I want to say neutral, but I'm going to give it a bad.
I feel like most of these are bad.
Probably.
Yeah, we haven't had a good one.
Except my view on mortgages.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is revolving credit accounts.
Oh, I think this is good.
Okay, this is good. Okay,
yeah.
Interesting. I don't remember what I thought about this. So revolving credit accounts, generally you'll have these on your mortgage, but some people have them for like business loans. It's very, very hard in New Zealand to get unsecured revolving credit. Back home, it's actually quite easy to get unsecured revolving credit, basically like a giant credit card limit. But we're in New Zealand, so I'll talk about that. Well, I'm curious to hear what you think because you said it's good.
So what I didn't really know anything about, but obviously, like I said, I'd never had a mortgage before, so I didn't really know much about this. And then when I started at Lighthouse, I started learning more about it. And the way when we bought our house, the way things played out is that we were going to have an extra 20 grand of cash after the deposit went down. And it meant that we've been able to open a revolving credit facility of 20 grand. And that has meant it's given us the flexibility. Basically, what this means is that you can, instead of locking that money away and putting it down on our mortgage permanently that we can't draw it back down, we can put it against our mortgage. So we're saving interest costs on 20 grand, but we can still use that money if we need to. And we have used that money to buy a car. So
wait, does this mean the blue egg is no more?
The blue egg's up for sale if anyone wants
I'm
to
just
take a
finding
look.
this out today.
Oh my gosh.
The end of an era.
Yeah, it is the end of an era. So yeah, we've bought ourselves a non-blue egg, but using that revolving credit. But in the meantime, we've been saving the interest costs on that money, right? So for me, it's been brilliant. And I think, and we'll obviously build that back up again, and it's effectively going to be set as an emergency fund for us to dip into if we need to. But all it would have meant is that we would have, if that didn't exist, is that we would have had a bigger mortgage and some cash sat there, and because we want to be able,
is sitting, it's not benefiting you.
So to me, it's good.
That is exactly the scenario that you should have revolving credit in.
Nailed it.
I think revolving credit is a good type of debt, but it's tailored towards a very specific type of person, which is, like you said, someone that has cash sitting aside that they don't know what to do with, but they don't want to put it against their mortgage and lose it permanently. If you're the kind of person that gets paid in lump sums, I think this is good because with a fixed term mortgage, you can make up to, like, depending on what bank you're with, you can make certain lump sum payments through the year. But if you want to make any additional payments past what your sort of cap is, then you'd be looking at breaking your fixed term in order to do so.
Penalized.
Exactly. You get penalized. But if you have a revolving credit facility or like a floating facility, you can make any payments anytime you want for any amount. So if you're the kind of person that is coming into large sums of cash, or you're getting like a inheritance or something that's coming down the pipeline, and you want to put it against the mortgage to sort of offset the interest costs, then this is the product for you. And I think in that case, it's a good debt.
I agree. And we should also note that we're using the word revolving credit, but they also go by, mine's called a flexi loan.
Yeah.
They have different names.
Every bank calls it something different.
Revolving,
like
Orbit, Flexi. They all have different funny names, so just keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, all different names. And then I'm not going to get too far into this one, but there is something that's very similar called an offset account.
Oh, is that different?
Which it's slightly different, and I don't think I'll talk about it today because then I'll end up talking about it forever. Okay. But they operate similarly.
It's the same outcome, right?
Same outcome,
just different
uses.
Structure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, next one is business loans. So that is specifically taking out a loan for your business. Either you're starting a business or you need capital to keep your business going. What do you think?
I think that is good/necessary.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think
I haven't started a business myself, but from what I've seen and heard, most of the time it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, if you're starting a business, you need some kind of cash injection to get going. And if you don't have that saved up, or you don't have someone that's willing to help you get going, invest, you're not going on Shark Tank, then a business loan is likely where you're going to end up. And there's different types, like there's IRD, small business loans you can get. There's specific companies that cater towards business lending. Like we refer people to Prospa quite a lot. They do a lot of different types of business loans. And with that, you just need to be mindful that you're taking out usually quite a good chunk of money, and you want to make sure that you are confident in the performance of your business so that you will be making enough money back to repay that lending at some point.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I didn't think about that. I just think of starting a business, growing a business, that's a good thing, but I guess not all businesses are
Well,
created equal.
exactly. I mean, there's probably so many business ideas out there that are just not going to fly. And I think a good example of this is I had a client that had taken out a business loan, an IRD small business loan for a business that they started, and it didn't end up going anywhere. And so then they
Can I
were
ask
just
how
left
much that
with,
was?
I think they're capped. The IRD loans are capped at a certain amount. And I think it's around, actually, I'm not going to say this because someone in the comments is going to say that I'm incorrect and I'm going to get
I'm
flamed.
wondering, I'm going to look that up. Are we talking tens of thousands or hundreds?
No. We're talking about like 10, 20 grand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. for the
In
baby
this
loans.
case, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, started a business. It didn't take off. It ended up basically failing. And now you're stuck with a business loan and no business revenue to pay it off. And now you're having to pay it off from your personal income. Not a great spot.
No. Okay. So we're saying good and necessary, but with the caveat that make sure your business is like you're going to put your all into it.
Make sure your idea isn't like
you're backing yourself.
Iguana walking. I don't know.
In New Zealand, there are no iguanas. Yeah.
Something good. Okay, so the very last one is student loans. What do you think?
I think for me, this has been a good debt, but I'm obviously working in finance. So it's been part of that whole decision, right? Like I left school. I knew I wanted to keep learning. I probably had a bit of growing up to do. I needed to decide what I wanted to do. So uni was perfect. And it's led to a career that I would not have had without a degree. So I just always knew I was following that trajectory. So for me, student loan, good. Not for everyone. If somebody knows they want to do a trade, they're not sure what they want to do, then perhaps loading yourself up with debt is not the right thing to do. So I think this one depends on the person, but for me, it's been good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good. I personally didn't have a student loan because I wasn't doing something that I was actually interested in when I started uni. And so I got to a point where I was like, you're going to have to take out a student loan. Why are you doing this degree? And it just didn't make sense. So I actually...
What were you doing?
I was doing an art history degree. I know this is like not at all related to what I do now, which is why I thought, I need to take a pause, because if I'm about to take out a whole bunch of debt to finish this degree, where is it going to get me and why am I taking out all that debt?
The perfect
and the
attitude to
answer
have,
is
right?
I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I didn't take out the debt. I changed my trajectory and I am not working in a museum looking at paintings all day. I am here with you.
Yay. Yeah, so that one I think very much depends on the person. If you're thinking about taking out a student loan, it's important you think about where that's going to take you in the long term. Is it a conscious decision or is it a default decision, I guess?
Yeah, and we also have to say, like in New Zealand, students are very lucky that interest isn't charged unless you move to overseas. And in a lot of countries, you get charged the interest right off the get-go. Like as soon as you take that loan, just like any other loan, you're making payments and you're charged interest. But here, I think students have it a lot better off than
when
you
else
could.
do you get an interest-free loan? Not very often.
Not for a car, that's for sure.
No. Maybe from Bank of Mum and Dad, that's about it.
Yeah, Bank of Mum and Dad.
Mm.
Okay, so we went through a very large list of loans. Some nice alliteration there for you today. And I think the key takeaways for what we talked about today is just really to be mindful when you make decisions on debt, because taking out loans can really affect your long-term goals. And if you're taking out loans for reasons that aren't, emergency or necessary, then you should just be saving up and hitting those goals that way. The second one I'd say is like, not all debt is bad. I know we said a lot of these debts are bad, but there are, sometimes necessary things that you need. And then my last one, I think, is cash is king. Save. Have an emergency fund, save for your trip, save for your wedding.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah, delayed gratification. And if you are doing something where you have to take a loan, like a vehicle or a mortgage, have as much deposit under your belt so that you're taking out as little debt as possible.
True. Agreed. Well, thank you so much to Partners Life for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.